Bitcoin is monetary independence. Boom. Happy Independence Day. Let's talk monetary sovereignty and financial independence. In 1776, our forefathers got together and decided to talk about breaking away from the tyrants across that Atlantic Ocean. Today, I want you to think about how financially independent you are. Are you building wealth? Are you a sovereign individual when it comes to your ability to control your spending power? Let's talk about the current financial system, the monetary policy. Then I'll talk about a hypothetical scenario with Alice, Bob, and Charlie, and which one of them does better. And then let's talk about Bitcoin and if it can fix this monetary sovereignty. And finally, we'll wrap up with some potential dangers on the horizon. This may surprise you, but your money is not your money. I've made videos on this before. The money in your checking account, your savings account, that is not your money. You give them $10 and they're going to lend out 90 of that $10 to other people. And I don't know if you've been to an ATM in the past and you've been denied a transaction of getting your own money out of it, but that's extremely frustrating. Moreover, the spending power of that money in your savings account has decreased about 30% in the past year. That's right, 30% more dollars have been printed in the last 12 months. Oh, but that's because of COVID. They needed to inject that into the system. Wrong. This has been going on for far too long. It is well enough that the people of the nation don't know how the banking and monetary system work, for if they did, there would be revolutions in the streets before tomorrow morning. That's Henry Ford. Why do you believe that the central bank and the Federal Reserve have your best interests at heart when they're implementing these loose monetary policy strategies that have statistically, and look at some charts, it's easy to show that it's broadening the rich-poor divide, and there's now a gargantuan gap between those that have wealth that grow monetarily and those that are just living hand-to-mouth. Basically, the poor are living hand-to-mouth on those hourly wages, and they're just trying to get by. Moreover, they're actually thanking the government for handing them a stimulus check and free money when they don't have the hard, scarce assets that the wealthy have that are able to compound and grow their wealth over time. And that's why we see the K-shaped recovery, because the rich and poor divide are growing substantial. Let's take a look at a hypothetical scenario. This is really pertinent. So Alice, she works hourly. She takes 10% of her paycheck every month and puts that in a savings account for a rainy day, for medical expenses, for college tuition for her kids. That savings account's getting 0.5% annual interest. And that's actually a good savings account. So that money's growing at 0.5% a year. Let's take Bob. Bob is that same hourly employee. He's taking 10% of that paycheck and investing it in stocks, in an S&P 500 index fund. That is averaging between 8 to 12% a year. And then finally, let's take Charlie. Charlie has 2 houses that he's renting out. He's using that rental income he's getting from those 2 houses to get another loan on a house. That loan is an interest rate of 2.85% in the current market right now. He's moving another renter in there, and he's building his property and his assets that are making him more money passively. Which of these individuals are actually growing their wealth? Alice is growing her savings at 0.5% annually. That would take her 140 years to double her money. She'll be dead. And inflation is growing at 2 to 4% a year. So she's actually losing that difference from inflation to her 0.5%. Alice is losing money every single year. Every single year she's going to see her savings account be able to buy less college tuition or medical bills or travel to some vacation destination. Bob is seeing approximately an 8 to 12% return averaged on his investments in the S&P 500 index fund every year compared to the inflation rate of 2 to 4%. Bob's savings is going to double approximately every 7 years. That's a pretty good risk for the average individual in getting rich. You're not going to get wealthy, but your savings is growing. Your spending power of that future savings is growing. Now let's finally look at Charlie. Charlie got a 2.85% loan from the bank to invest in a property. So Charlie's not even putting up his own money for that. He's putting up that house as collateral, and the fact that he's going to be having renters as that collateral. So his wealth is growing with each scarce asset or property that he purchases. Moreover, those are able to get him money. That wealth is growing over time. As long as he has renters, that's going to be continuing. So there's a little bit more risk there because there is risk at the housing market collapsing or that he's not able to get renters. But if he's investing wisely in a good growing area, the property values are going to increase and there's always going to be renters that are looking to rent from him. Charlie is taking on more risk, but if you have a long time horizon for that, if Charlie's not planning on selling a house every year, if he's got a decade plus time horizon for that, he doesn't have to worry about the fluctuations in the market pricing for housing. He can take that risk and spread it out over the long time. We've seen that market housing prices are generally increasing. He's going to have the same for renters. So it depends on your time horizon and your risk appetite. Financial independence, get this, is risky. If you are independent from somebody else, inherently your decisions are going to be what drives you to success or failure. Don't blame anybody else other than yourself. That's the power of independence. You are in control of your destiny. I would actually argue that Alice is taking on the most risk in this scenario by saving 10% of her income every single year, month in a savings account, and that's only appreciating at 0.5%, that's actually deflating. The purchasing power of that over the years will decrease because of inflation. That purchasing power of that US dollar denominated savings account will go down. Alice is assuming the most risk here long term. Bob is probably in the sweet spot for many of the people that are watching this. Take that 10% from your savings account and invest that into a low expense index fund in stocks so that that money compounds over time. And based on the rule of 72s, that stock index fund is probably going to double approximately every 7 years. That's a pretty good risk adjusted return. If you just let it sit there for at least 5 years, you're going to have a good return from that. And then finally, Charlie, somebody may see this as risky, but if your time horizon is a decade or longer, that property is not going to significantly fluctuate over that long time horizon, and it's probably going to increase if you've done a good job at researching where you should be buying properties. That's going to increase over time, as well as your ability to invest in subsequent properties over time. Some people think, let's pay off that mortgage real quick. If you've got a 2.8% mortgage and the inflation is 2 to 4%, why would you pay that off? Why wouldn't you just let that run and then use the money that you're getting from that mortgage to do other things? Yes, it is leveraging. So you do have to invest in good, solid, sound investments that have a very good chance of paying off over time. But that is the best way to make money, is with money. Make money with your money, if that makes sense. That's a lower risk than it may seem on the surface if you have a long time horizon. This is why wealthy individuals invest in assets and property. That's why they buy paintings and classic cars and expensive watches, because those assets are scarce and they're most likely to gain value over time. They have that purchasing power, if they were money, increasing instead of what the US dollar does, is literally decrease every single year. So if you see a wealthy individual having a large house with paintings and cars, they're buying them because they may like those paintings and cars, but those are actually assets they're investing in that'll grow over time. And they're also not taxed until they're sold. I hope this makes sense. Alice is living hand to mouth and is literally having her purchasing power erode over time, and she's dependent on everything for hand to mouth. And then we have Charlie, who is taking what he has earned in a financially independent manner and investing that in the future, and his wealth is growing over time. There's two drastic sides of the extreme there, but I wanted to explain these to help you understand financial independence and wealth and the compound interest rates. Now that you understand that financial independence, we can take it to monetary independence. We can take it into that sovereignty realm. We talked about that, going to an ATM and then not being able to withdraw your money. That is extremely powerful when you get denied the access to your own money. Something clicks in your head. This isn't right. And it's true. As a bank, when they take my $10, they're going to loan $90 out to somebody else. So they technically don't even have my money to give me if they really did want to. But they're basically assessing that ATM withdrawal request real time and then seeing if they want to honor that. That should set off red flags. I do not have monetary independence. That bank owns my money instead of me owning my money. Bitcoin does fix this. If I own my private keys of Bitcoin, I own my money. Nobody can tell me I can't spend that or transact that. I have that financial sovereignty. The only way that Bitcoin wouldn't last is if you have a zombie apocalypse or some catastrophic world event where the internet is literally destroyed. But at that point, you've got bigger issues than whether your Bitcoin's working. You got to get those zombie bullets out or get some better cardio going. Just like that scarce asset that Charlie was buying and aggregating that property, that's what Bitcoin is. It's a scarce asset. It is virtual digital property. So there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins. A lot of those have already been lost. There's currently about 18 million of them today. Guess what? There's more than 21 million millionaires in the world. So therefore, every millionaire will not be able to hold at least one Bitcoin. So what I'm proposing is you get off of zero, right? You don't have to own one Bitcoin, but don't own no Bitcoin. Get some scarce digital asset, digital property, some digital sovereignty. Bitcoin is inflating at approximately 1.7% today, and in 2024 it'll start inflating at approximately 0.8% annually. Compare that to the US dollar inflating 2 to 4%, or some Latin American currencies, 40% a year. You can see the power here. And after a while, the amount of Bitcoins that are lost every year are going to outnumber those that are put in the system via inflation. So you're technically going to have a deflationary system. Whereas the US dollar's inflation is meant to devalue the bonds and to get spending more short term. The exact opposite is true with Bitcoin. You're valued your long time horizon savings, right? My Bitcoin tomorrow is going to be more valuable than the Bitcoin today. So I have more of an incentive to store that value for the future and then maybe take a loan against your Bitcoin and spend that. Yes, it is volatile. It fluctuates wildly more than a lot of other assets, but that is exactly what price discovery is. Nobody is able to accurately assign a price to it because it's a new asset. It's only been here for a decade. Let's give it more time. But what I would encourage you to do is zoom out. Look at it on a long time horizon. You can see the deflationary factors in effect, the disinflationary factors in effect. It is moving from lower left to upper right, monotonically increasing in 4-year cycles. But zoom out, look at it with long time horizon and not every single week. Be your own bank. Get off of zero. Just buy a fraction of one Bitcoin and then play around with it. Try to transact it. And then finally, let's talk about central bank digital currencies. This could be scary, right? The digital renminbi, the CBDC of China, that's becoming this thing where they're actually actively testing it right now. They will, mark this in tapes, they will take their central bank digital currency and force its use across the One Belt, One Road so that everybody is using the renminbi, the yuan, as the currency of choice. And the CCP, the Chinese party, will control that. They will have surveillance. They will have censorship. They will have utter control, even more so than the US has right now with our US dollar denominated central currency. This is dystopian. This has great chance of being a very large black swan. And if you watch Black Mirror, significant ramifications for this in terms of privacy, in terms of sovereignty, in terms of Western democracy, rights and freedoms, ethics and morals. So that is one significant thing on the horizon. Wanted to wish you guys a happy Independence Day, happy monetary Independence Day. This is Jerry. See ya.